The sad part here is now the Democrats need to do their job. The president can no longer ignore by not negotiating. Senator Schumer, if he thinks he's got a plan, put it on the floor. See if you can pass it, and then we can go to conference. We lifted the debt limit. We've sent it to the Senate. We've done our job.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy keeping his promises yesterday, saying that the ball is now in President Biden's court after the House narrowly passed the Limit, Save, Grow Act. It raises the debt ceiling in exchange for spending limits. A new Fox News poll finds that 50% of Americans are against raising the debt limit. 44% are in favor. Last hour, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace joined me, explaining why at the last minute she changed her vote to a yes going into that vote.
Well, meeting with McCarthy right before the vote yesterday afternoon to have my concerns heard. I even wrote an op-ed about my priorities to balance the budget or have a path forward to talk about a balanced budget amendment. And I got the Speaker's commitment yesterday to work with us on that. I also got a commitment from him to work with us on other issues like women's issues and gun violence issues.
Joining me right now is Kentucky Congressman, member of the House Financial Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. He's also a member of the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the U.S. and the Chinese Communist Party. Andy Barr is with us. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks very much.
Good morning, Maria.
And your thoughts on this bill?
Well, look, Joe Biden has been missing in action on the debt limit for the last 100 days. Speaker McCarthy sat down with the president in the White House to talk about negotiating, not just raising the debt limit and avoiding default, which obviously we need to do to protect the full faith and credit of the United States, but also to protect the full faith and credit of the United States by stopping the reckless spending spree in Washington. We are seeing a decline in global demand for U.S. securities, and there's a reason for that. The dollar's dominance is at risk. You were talking about how global trade is now being transacted in the yuan. We need to get our fiscal house in order. So it's not just about avoiding default in the short term. It is about stopping the immoral stealing from future generations of Americans, limiting spending, ending the era of overspending in Washington, saving taxpayer dollars, and growing the economy.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. It's very discouraging and really frightening to see that the Chinese Communist Party has been able to replace the dollar with its transactions from China. Look, I think people are questioning whether or not they could actually be successful in replacing the dollar overall as the global reserve currency, but they're acting aggressively toward that. The Limit, Save, Grow Act is expected to save $4.8 trillion in the next 10 years. But you and your colleagues are calling for an annual growth in spending at 1% for a decade. 1% increases for a decade. That's pretty harsh, Congressman. Are you going to be able to do that, or is that a negotiating tactic to get Joe Biden to the table?
Frankly, given the $31.7 trillion national debt that we face right now and the threats to our economy and the sustainability of our fiscal trajectory, I think that's very reasonable. I think the fact that we still allow some level of spending growth over the next 10 years, but save $4.8 trillion in this package shows that we're being very reasonable with this proposal. And so the idea that we would simply open up a new credit card and give President Biden and Democrats who have increased the spending trajectory by $10 trillion in just 2 years, that we would just give them another credit card is totally reckless.
Wow.
And so the idea here with the Limit, Save, and Grow Act is, yes, avoid default. We all agree we will avoid default, but also protect our full faith and credit in the medium and long term by putting our country on a more sound fiscal footing.
Yeah.
Look, the overspending over the last 2 years, and actually before that as well, has produced, and the monetary policy mistakes as well, have created 40-year high inflation, supply chain shortages, rapid rise in interest rates that has led to a banking instability crisis. So we've got to change course, and this policy proposal that we've now put in the Senate and for the administration to consider will solve many of these problems. and put us on a more responsible fiscal trajectory.
Well, you've also talked a lot about the reliance on China and moving the supply chains out of China, and yet this climate change agenda of Joe Biden and the Democrats is basically making us even more reliant on China, because many of the items here are made in China, like batteries, like solar panels. The House Select Committee on China is demanding answers right now from the FBI. In a new letter on Chinese police stations operating across the country, Chairman Mike Gallagher raising the possibility that the FBI was unaware of the secret police station in New York City prior to public reporting. We were among the first to report that there was a Chinese police station in New York City. How did they not know it? How did I know it and they didn't know it?
Yeah, Maria, you should deserve a lot of credit. You and Fox Business have been all over this story, and it's been publicly reported. And so that's why the Select Committee, under the leadership of Chairman Gallagher, we sent a letter back in February to the FBI and said, what are you doing about this? We know of 30 public reports of Chinese police stations engaged in transnational repression of the Chinese diaspora in the United States and elsewhere. Being spied upon by the Chinese Communist Party. We knew about this, and we wanted to know, what is the FBI doing about it? We now see the FBI taking some actions against a Chinese police station in New York City with the arrest of 2 individuals, Chinese individuals, and also charges against 44 Chinese nationals. But more needs to be done. More individuals from the Ministry of Public Security, is what it's called, need to be charged. And we need to stop this transnational repression. There's a lot we need to do to counter Chinese aggression. But let me return to your earlier point. We're actually responding to Chinese aggression in this debt limit bill that we just passed by repealing all these Green New Deal tax credits that this administration is spending taxpayer dollars on, and also H.R. 1, unleashing American energy dominance. If we want to be competitive with the Chinese Communist Party, we can't sacrifice our energy independence, our energy dominance. We need to unleash American energy in this country. We have an all of the above strategy. We do not need to tie our hands behind our back and become more dependent on China.
By the way, real quick before you go, why did Vice President Joe Biden waive federal audit requirements for Chinese companies and allow them to list on our major exchanges and not follow the rules that every other public company has to follow? Was that one of the decisions that you all are investigating? Why did he allow that?
Well, my friend and colleague, Jamie Comer from Kentucky, is obviously on the Oversight Committee. Nancy Mace, who was on the program, other members of the Oversight Committee are looking into how the Biden family has been compromised by the Chinese Communist Party with a number of deals that have benefited personally the Biden family. Okay. And so we want to get to the bottom of that, obviously. But the bottom line is this administration is weak on China, whether it's a spy balloon, whether it's responding to COVID, whether it's holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable for these overseas police stations, allowing Americans to unwittingly invest in Chinese military technology companies. That's why the Select Committee exists, to have a bipartisan response to the weakness of this administration when it comes to China. Yeah. The cross-strait threat at Taiwan is real. The Select Committee has been looking at that. We need more deterrence.
How disturbing all of this sounds. Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work. Andy Barr this morning.
Good to be with you.
In D.C. Thank you, sir. We'll be right back. Stay with us.